Hello, and thank you once again for tuning into my show, Real Talk about Life and Relationships, with me, Sage the Coach, also known as Stephanie K. And yeah, sometimes when I start these things, I get a little bit confused about what I want to say. So anyway, yes, I did not do my show last week. It was Christmas. I got really busy. I tried to squeeze it in. It didn't work. So I'm back this week to pick up where I left off the week before. So before I dive into everything today, I just want to let you know that you can watch my show on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and also through the Entertainment Theater app on the Apple Store and the Android Google Play. You can also watch it on Roku too with the Entertainment Theater app that's on there as well. And so yeah, tune in. I'm really trying to share the information that I think everybody needs. I know I went through a lot to learn this information for myself. And so I just want to help people, skip a couple steps and especially the steps that I had to go through to skip a couple steps and, improve their lives and their relationships. And um, so one second, because I'm getting a message. I need to see what it is. Okay. So, so it's really important. This information I'm sharing is really important. I started my podcast back in November. But since then, I've really been focusing on growth and the importance of growth and how it affects our relationships, stuff like that, because it's really the root of everything. And so the first show I did was called The Importance of Growth. And then I talked about how we grow and how growth affects our relationships and then how it affects our romantic relationships. Um, and so today, what I want to talk about is how to deal with our issues because a lot of people don't know how to do that. And that's the main thing that growth is about. So, growth, when you have issues, your issues are indicators of where you need to grow. And so, a lot of people don't fully realize that because they get so stuck on feeling guilty, feeling like they're bad people, not wanting to bend when it comes to other people, which is basically pride. Um, and so they don't get to the nitty gritty of what the issues are for. So again, all of this ties into the fact that we need to grow. And so that's what I did my first show about because it's going to be the basis for a lot of other stuff that I talk about. So it's very important for us to grow. A lot of people think that life is about a lot of different things. They think it's about success, making a mark, making money. Some people even think that life is about serving God, which I'm not going to say that is not. But if you just think life is about serving God and that's it, you're kind of missing the point because in serving God, you're supposed to grow. So everything boils down to us needing to grow as people. We're given a lot of what we need in seed type of form. And so it has to be watered, it has to be taken care of, it has to be nurtured in order for it to grow. And so your mind grows, your spirit grows, your emotions, all these parts, different aspects of yourself, your body grows. All these different aspects of yourself are designed to grow, and then they filter into your choices and your relationships. And so it's very, very important. So a lot of times when people keep seeing these dysfunctional kind of patterns and stuff in their lives, it really boils down to an area that they're not growing in. And so you need to know yourself and you need to know what your issues are so you can do that. And so that's kind of what I want to talk about today is growing, dealing with your issues because they're where you need to grow. So just think about that. I know a lot of people who ignore their issues. Some people don't realize they have issues, and then some people just ignore their issues. Some people are scared to face their issues, and so when you do that, of course, it just causes you more problems. But I want to focus on today how to deal with your issues. First, how to identify that you have issues, and then a few steps of what you need to deal with your issues. Now, you could be one of those people who just deny that you have issues and stuff like that. Your life will continue to be unsatisfactory and you're going in the same circles. Um, you know, I would say until you die, but I guess a better thing, a more positive spin on that would be until you are ready to make a decision to do things differently. So everything is boils down to the mind, and what you do with your mind, and of course it needs to grow as well. But it starts with the mind. So if you're not aware that you have issues, or you know that you have issues, and you don't make a choice with your mind to deal with those issues, you will keep going around in the same circles in specific aspects of your life, and you will get frustrated and not really understand why it's getting better and stuff like that, because everything is connected. So when you don't deal with the root of a thing, it will start to affect other things as it begins to grow, because as stuff grows, especially within us, it branches off into all these other things, like the way you think, the way you feel about yourself, how you think about other people, how you think about God, and all this different stuff. And so you have to get to the root of the problem if you really want those outer things to see change in those outer things. And so that's what I do with my podcast. It's what I do with my coaching. It's what I do with my books. I'm trying to help people to get to the roots of stuff so that they can see the change that they want to see, not only in their personal lives, but also in their relational lives, and all the different aspects of ourselves, and especially when it comes to our choices as well. So so for those of you who don't know, I am a certified, multi-certified life and relationship coach. So that's where all of this is coming from. And you can reach out to me for a free session. You want to watch this or watch my other stuff and say, hey, she's kind of talking about some things that are relevant to me, and you want to reach out for a free session, please feel free to do that. You can do that by visiting my website at www.unveilingthespirit.com, and it will give you more information about how to get a free session with me. Outside of that, please share this content with anybody that you think needs it or might be interested in it and stuff like that. Because again, I'm telling you, this stuff is crucial. I coach so many people. I talk to so many people who are struggling in so many aspects of their lives, and it boils down to these basic principles. They're not basic, they're complicated, to be honest. But these universal principles when it comes to our makeup, what we're here for, and how it affects all the other parts of our lives. So share, reach out yourself, because that's what I'm here for. So anyway, so back to what I was talking about, which is how to identify your issues. So let me just talk a little bit about, I want you to, it's going to be crucial for you to understand kind of where I'm going with this if you go watch the other shows. So the importance of growth, how we grow, because some people don't even realize the different aspects that they need to grow in. Some people think they might need to grow their career, you know what I'm saying, and stuff like that, or grow their assets, or, grow their material wealth or whatever. That's not what I'm talking about. So I talk about the different ways that we grow as people, that we need to grow as people. And so you can watch that video as well. And then I talk about how growth affects our relationships, and then how they affect our romantic relationships. So if you watch those, this video here today will make more sense to you. So I urge you to do that. But in this one, I'm going to talk about identifying your issues. So how to identify that you have an issue. Because again, a lot of times we don't know. So I talked about before how relationships show us aspects of ourselves that we would not otherwise see. So a lot of times you can have issues, and if you don't have people around you that you can trust, that'll tell you the truth and things like that, you are not always going to be aware of your more deeper problems. I always say that we have a biased point of view of ourselves. We tend to think we're better than we are, or that we're worse than we are. And so we need to balance those things out. And actually relationships helps us to balance those things out and get a better picture of ourselves. And it's that comes from people who love you. So I'm not saying everybody's opinion about who you are and what you do is relevant. Because, as they say, everybody has an opinion. And some opinions are stupid, just to be honest. So you want to pay attention to the people who love you. So like even my kids, like they will go to school and they will get teased and stuff like that. And they come home and say, so-and-so don't like me. They said I'm this, they said I'm that. Look, it doesn't matter what other people think. What matters is what you think about yourself, and what the people who love you, like genuinely love you, not people who say they love you and then they break you down and talk about you behind your back and all that type of stuff. Those people don't love you. They're incapable of expressing love on a mature level. Let me say it like that. So, but you want to have those relationships where you trust that people are open to you, they listen to you, they talk to you, they care for you, they make sacrifices for you. Those are the people, those that they're consistent in this thing that they do. Those people's opinion about who you are and what you do is very, very valuable. You will not get that perspective from anybody else. And they can be family, they can be friends, they can be romantic partners. But if you get a sense or you believe, I believe people know when they're genuinely loved. Like sometimes people have issues and they think that people love them who mistreat them. And that's a whole different podcast. But I think for the most part, people understand when someone genuinely cares about them. And those are the people's opinions that you want to listen to. It doesn't necessarily mean that everything they say is going to be right, but you want to listen to it and take some time to do some self-reflection and figure out if there's any relevance to what they're saying. So how to know if you have issues, I'm basically giving you the key right there, is going to be number one through your relationships, through your trusted relationships. If people are telling you stuff about yourself repeatedly, especially throughout several relationships, then that's something for you to pay attention to. So, for example, if somebody says that you get angry when I try to do this, talk to you about this, or you don't do this, or you don't do that, you need to pay attention. Again, it does not mean they are right, but it does warrant you to take a deeper look at yourself and figure out what parts of it might be right, what parts of it that you need to change. So that's one way to know if you have issues. Another way to know if you have issues is what type of relationship do you have with yourself? And this is going to include like your mood and stuff like that, because a lot of people struggle with depression, anger, you know, depression kind of branches off into a lot of different things like low self-esteem, beating themselves up. You're just generally not happy for some reason. You get agitated very easily. So a lot of these things, especially when you're alone, are indicators that you have issues. So if you consistently have like problems with when you're by yourself, you get down on yourself about stuff and you are kind of sad and stuff like that, that's a sign that you have an issue. And so it needs to be dealt with. And so this is important because a lot of times people ignore their emotions or they try to anesthetize their emotions. So say, for example, people who drink or do drugs and stuff like that, a lot of the times, if you're doing that to get away from feeling something, you are stopping the cycle or the process that's necessary for you to grow as a person, because those feelings are there for a reason. And just like, and I always explain it this way, if you have a pain in your body, the pain is an indicator that something needs to be paid attention to within your body. And so again, it's like a fever, stuff like that. When you start having symptoms, those specific type of symptoms, and I'll kind of reduce it to pain, it is an indicator to let you know that something in your body needs your attention so you can work on it, so you can fix it. It is the same thing with your emotions. A lot of people use emotions in the wrong way, but the emotions are simply a means to let you know that something, it lets you know what effect something is having on you. So if you hear a joke, you laugh. Laughter, or I guess you can say laughter is emotion, but it's letting you know that that joke was funny to you, because everybody doesn't laugh at every joke, which I'm sure you know. So, but if you laugh, then that lets you know that that joke was funny to you. So it lets you know how something is affecting you. If you are having a conversation and after you leave that conversation, you feel discouraged, that lets you know that that conversation was discouraging to you. Now, people oftentimes mistake their emotions for truth. It does not mean that it's true. You know, if a conversation that you had with somebody, you walk away from it feeling discouraged, that doesn't necessarily mean that that person is discouraging person. So you have to keep those things in perspective and understand the role that your emotions play when it comes to you processing information, because that's all that it is, your emotions are for. I mean, it helps you to feel connection to things too, but which still goes back to what I was saying. But your emotions let you know how something is affecting you. So if you ignore that, you are ignoring. It's the same thing as having a fever and ignoring it. It's the same thing as having a pain in your leg and ignoring it. It's the same thing as having a pain in your chest and ignoring it. So, or irritation somewhere in your body and ignoring it. You can't afford to do that. As a person, as a being that is designed to grow, when your body or your mind or your spirit gives you indications that something needs to be paid attention to, it is for you with your conscious mind, which I always say is a God quality, is a God quality. We are made in the image of God, and so we can think. There's nothing on the planet, a tree, a cat, a dog, they think on a very basic level. We have very sophisticated wiring when it comes to our brains, and it is one of the things that makes us made in the image of God, because we can do that. We can think, we can analyze, we can reflect, we can make choices. It's very powerful, and that's a whole different podcast. So when you have this information that's saying something is wrong, pay attention to it, you need to take your wonderful, beautiful mind and pay attention to it and try to figure out what is going on, just like the same way you go to the doctor to try to figure out what's going on inside your body. So the thing when it comes to emotions, because they're not physical, so a doctor can easily look at what's going on in your body, not all the time, because sometimes they get it wrong, and say, okay, you're having an infection, or your knee is out of joint, or you have arthritis. But when it comes to your emotions, it is much more complicated because there's not a physical reference to verify whatever the issue is. So you have to go a little bit deeper and do a little bit more soul searching than you would have to do when it comes to physical stuff. And that's what makes it not easy, because you don't have anything to necessarily, especially outside of yourself, again, that's physical, to verify what is going on. But you have to dive in there to find out what it is. And so when you realize that something is affecting you a certain way, you have to deal with it. So if you are, always sad, and there's a lot of little indicators, but it all boils down to negativity. So if you have a negative, persistent thing, a negative, persistent feeling or mindset in your life, that is an indicator that something needs to be paid attention to inside of you. So again, you will do yourself a huge disservice if you don't pay attention to it. And so your body is trying to help you. Your mind is trying to help you. Hey, we have an issue in here. We need you. We're going to give you these negative feelings, just like pain in your body, to get your attention so that you can pay attention to what is going on here inside of you. And so again, so if you're sad all the time, if you're depressed all the time, if you're moody all the time, if you're agitated, if you're angry, any negative, persistent feeling. And when I say persistent, it doesn't have to be every day, every day, every day. It can be every week or every month, like something that continuously happens to the point where you can see that there's a pattern. Then you need to pay attention to it. So for example, me, I talked about in my other podcast how I struggled with depression for probably about 10 or 15 years. I was sad all the time. Even when nothing was going on around me that would necessarily make me sad, I was always sad. And it got worse when I was by myself. So this comes down to like I was saying, your personal relationship with yourself is how do you deal with yourself when you're by yourself, And so I was always sad. And when I was by myself, it was worse. It could get into a full-blown depression. And sometimes it got to the point where I would become suicidal. And so I just thought I was a sad person. I never really connected that there was a deeper issue. I don't say I never, because eventually I figured it out, but I didn't connect it at the time. I was so used to seeing the world through a very, very sad lens that was normal to me. And so I just thought that's how I was, and, stuff like that, until, as my relationship with God grew, he started bringing those things to my attention, that there was an issue there. And so as I started dealing with stuff and diving a little bit deeper into myself to figure out what it was, I found out I had an issue. And so I'm saying all that to say, this is another indicator that you have an issue. And there's a lot of things. So, yeah. And if you have questions about what might be happening to you, because they also segue into bad habits, because what you're trying to do is solve the problem outwardly instead of solving it inwardly. So, for example, if you always feel like you're not enough, and then you always are spending a lot of money on shoes and all that stuff, or clothes or makeup or whatever, to try to make yourself feel like you're enough. And if you don't have those things, you feel bad, stuff like that. sign of a problem. So this can get really kind of complicated. And again, that's why I kind of like to deal with people one-on-one when it comes to these type of things personally, so we can pinpoint what the exact problem is that you're having, because it will vary from person to person, personality. But for the most part, I'm trying to explain to you how to know if you have an issue. So that's the second one. So the first one I said is in your relationships, where people keep pointing out things to you. And then personally, when you're by yourself and how you feel about yourself and things of that nature. The third one is, I kind of said it already, but it's the choices that you make. So that's when I was talking about it branches into bad habits. If you have a lot of negativity in the choices that you make, and I mean negativity as far as you making choices that are not healthy for you, they don't help you be a better person, that's an indication that you have some stuff going on there. So again, it kind of goes into bad habits. So, but you have to monitor yourself. You have to look at your choices. You have to look at yourself. You have to look at your relationships. Again, self-reflection. Use that big, beautiful, powerful brain you have and dive into some things and try to figure out what's going on, because life is much more than what we see on the surface. And people who live their lives on the surface are usually not happy people, and very shallow people, and that comes with a lot of negative consequences. And so even for me, when it comes to Christianity, one of the things that has stood out to me over the years is that that is what God is asking of us, to not live life on the surface, to look deeper into things, to look deeper into ourselves, to look deeper into Him, to look deeper into our friends, our family, and things like that. And so when you live a life on the surface, you're missing about 75-80% of life, because only the surface stuff is what, the surface stuff is just what we see. It's a reflection of all the other stuff that's going on underneath. So you have to dive a little bit deeper. Your brain is capable of doing it. Your spirit is capable of doing it. You're capable of doing it. So, and that's again why God gave us our minds, so that we can do it. So you need to dive a little bit deeper. Look at these things and figure out, are you seeing any persistent negative patterns or consequences of your choices that is kind of prevalent in your life? And so, for example, if you're always getting in fights, if you're always angry, if you're always broke, if you're always feeling abandoned, if you always are struggling with your identity, all of these things that make your life less peaceful, less fruitful, less satisfying, and kind of miserable, for lack of a better word. So you want to look at these things, and that's how you can figure out if you have an issue. But figuring out you have an issue is the first step. So don't think once you figure out you have an issue, then that's it. Because I know a lot of people who are not aware of their issues, but then I know people who are aware of their issues and they don't do anything about it. They feel like they're fine. And I actually just had this conversation a little bit ago. But they think they're fine, and that their issues, sometimes people even feel like their issues serve them, they help them, they protect them. I've met many people like that. And it's just unfortunate, because you're missing out on a part of life and relationships and fulfillment that you were designed to have. And so when you don't deal with yourself, you're doing a disservice to yourself. You're not being fair to yourself. And so once you say, you know what, I do have an issue, again, it's that indicator, something's going on, let's pay attention. The next thing you have to do is now figure out what the issue is. And so that's a completely different process. But the main thing, ingredients to even getting to this point, is to self-reflect, examine the stuff around you, and to be honest with yourself. A lot of people have a hard time doing that. And so, but you have to. It's the key that unlocks the door. If you're not honest with yourself, you're not going to get to the bottom of what's going on with you, because you need honesty to get there. It's like a map for your internal workings. You have to be honest with yourself. Even if you're scared, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it's painful, you have to be honest with yourself to get to the root of the issue. And so I'm trying to think. Another thing that you can look out for when it comes to identifying if you have an issue is how you respond to stress. And so, because a lot of times people can keep their issues contained because they're distracted by life. You got to eat, you got to pay bills, you got to take a bath, you got to do all these things. And so it's very easy, if you think about what I just said a little bit ago, to live your life on the surface. We just take care of our responsibilities, we go to work, we pay bills, blah, 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 blah. And so it becomes sometimes a distraction for you to go deeper. And a lot of people do this. So you don't even have to be dysfunctional to do this because life is just busy anyway. But when you get stressed out, it will bring what is hidden up. So if you're stressed and then you overreact to scenarios. So for example, people who you're going to work, you're driving, somebody cuts you off. If you get really, really mad, oh my goodness, you start cussing. Yes, the person probably shouldn't have cut you off, and that's warranted some irritation. But if you get really, really mad about it, like road rage mad, that is a sign that something else is in there. It is not just that person. Actually, that person is the surface. It's the trigger it's the trigger that is letting you know something is there, because you're going through your life, you're not thinking about it. So the way you respond to stress is an indication of what is going on underneath. So, and the main thing when it comes to that is when you're overreacting. So if you're super duper mad over something small, or you beat yourself up for a long time over a tiny mistake, or you are, super duper happy over something that's not really that happy, something to be that happy about. People can also use happiness as a distraction from what's going on with them. But for the most part, stress can help you see that there's some problems underneath that you're not dealing with. So I just wanted to point that out as well. And again, I can go into that more like on a one-on-one, and I'm pretty sure I'll talk about it more as we go through the videos. And so, so watch your emotions, watch your stress, what kind of relationship you have with yourself, what kind of choices do you make, and then what your relationships are like with other people can really give you a really good idea that if there's something you need to pay attention to. So once you get to the source, once you realize that there's an issue, now you have to get to the source. I kind of feel like I want to make this a different video, and I'm probably going to do it next week because it's a whole nother step process to go through. But I do want to say before I wrap up that I wanted to talk about this in terms of male and female, because we're wired a little bit differently. And of course, there's variation. I've met men who, some of the main differences between men and women is that women are more emotional based creatures. Men are more logical based creatures. But that's not always the case. I've met many men who are super duper emotional and not logical at all. And then I've met women who are very logical, and then they are not very emotional. Whichever one you are, you still have to be balanced. So don't think if you're a logical woman that somehow that puts you ahead of the race somehow, because if you're not in touch with your emotions, then that's a problem, because your emotions help you process information, how something is affecting you, so that you can decide if you're going on a healthy track or an unhealthy track. And so if you ignore those things, that's a problem. So you have to be balanced. So anybody, male or female, if you're super logical, you need to come on over to the emotional side a little bit more. If you're super emotional, you need to come on over to the logical side a little bit more and be more balanced, because all of us are logical and emotional based creatures. And it's just that men tend to gravitate to logic more easily, and women tend to gravitate towards emotion. But we both need to be balanced out. And in my personal opinion, that's why God created the sexes, so we can help each other to balance each other out. We have a lot to learn from each other. And a lot of times we end up fighting and going back and forth instead of actually learning stuff. But, that's the human race for you. So, but what I wanted to say is that sometimes when it comes to identifying your issues, it can be a little bit more, I don't want to say a little bit more, it's challenging to women in a different way, because we're emotional based creatures. We base a lot of stuff on our emotions that are not necessarily about our emotions. So again, if you go back to what I said, emotions are your way of knowing how something is affecting you. Now, there are other uses for emotions, don't get me wrong, but that's like the main thing. And so if you are using your emotions, a lot of women think that their emotions are truth. So if you feel something, especially if it's a very overwhelming feeling, you think that somehow applies to everybody, and what you're feeling is the truth about the situation. That is not the case. It's not true. And so sometimes it's a little bit more difficult. Again, not all. It's a little bit more difficult for women to pinpoint, to get some balance when it comes to their emotions, to figure out what their issues are, because they get so overwhelmed so easily about how they feel that it doesn't even come down to processing information, how stuff affects them and what their issues are. They just start kind of blanketing scenarios and people with their emotions. And so it's a little bit of a different work when it comes to women, to figure out what their issues are through their emotions. And so I just really wanted to pinpoint that, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. As a matter of fact, I think I'm going to stay on this topic all month so that people can really get an idea of how to deal with themselves when it comes to their issues, because we all have them, like we all do. So if you're one of those people who think you don't have any issues, you're all good, think again. We're all in the same boat. Swimming, some people have paddles and some people have speedboats, but we're all in the same mess. So that's kind of what I want to talk about today. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up here. But again, I want to wrap up with two questions about, actually, I'm going to do one question because I didn't get to some stuff I want to talk about today. Is, are you honest about your issues? Like, can you be honest with yourself about your issues? If you see patterns in yourself, I think to some degree, people are aware that something is going on. They might not know exactly what it is, but you need to be honest with yourself. So if somebody points it out to you, do you just say, no, it's not true, and then you go on about your day or whatever, or you get rid of the person in your life because you don't want to have to be faced with that? You just have to be honest with yourself. So that's like the first thing I want you to ask yourself is, are you honest with yourself about your issues? And so next week, we'll talk about more about what those issues might or might not be. But again, you have to be honest with yourself about yourself. If you can't be honest with yourself about yourself, you're not going to be honest in a relationship. Like, everything you do in a relationship extends from what is already going on inside of you, your toolkit that you already have. So if you can't be honest with yourself, you're not going to be honest with somebody else, especially when it really counts. And the relationship is going to struggle, and then you're going to wonder why, because you haven't developed that skill that's necessary for relationships to thrive, for growth to thrive in yourself or in your relationships. So that's all I want to say today. You can ask your questions in the chat under this box. I'll keep an eye out for them on the social media platforms that you're on. Again, tune in next week at Thursday at 12 p.m. for another episode of Real Talk About Life and Relationships. And I will continue this about how to identify your issues. And then when you realize you have an issue, where do you go from there? And so, thank you so much for tuning in. Again, please like, share, follow, invite other people to my page. Again, I really think this information is invaluable. Like, if people knew all the suffering that I went through to get this information, you will be happy that I'm giving it to you free of charge without suffering. I mean, you're probably suffering in your own life, but it takes a lot to get this type of information. So I suffered to give it to you in hopes that you don't have to suffer so much to get this information for yourself. So anyway, so that's about it. Thank you again. Tune in next week. If you have any questions, let me know. Also, you can visit my webpage at www.unveilingthespirit.com for a free session if this is some stuff you want to dive into a little bit more. And I also have some courses coming out this year that I will post soon, so that if you want to take any of those as well, they will be available. Other than that, Happy New Year, and have a great day, and I'll see you next week. All right, thanks. Bye.